That's number one. You kind of reset.
Painful, tender to the touch. May also
Same shoulder length, and the other.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Real Health Podcast with Brandy and Amir. I am Dr. Amir Rashidian, a chiropractor, and Brandy is my life and business and everything else senior partner.
Senior?
The looks, the brains.
Okay, he's older than me.
The wisecracks. She was rapping before we started.
I'm good, too.
And today we have Devin Brady with us, Mr. Devin Brady, a bodybuilder, and we're going to chat with him in depth. But before we do, I want to tell you what the Real Health Podcast is about. This is where we take mainstream media news, articles, and information, and we'll try to summarize it for you and explain what it means and what it should mean to you. We'll bring it to you from a wellness and health perspective. We are hoping that we can reduce the need for drugs and surgery in the population. And our focus, our hope is that you'll use the information to feel better, get stronger, live longer, and feel younger. So, but today we probably, just like last time when we were talking to Blake and Mark, we didn't get to the articles that
but
we wanted
warned
to.
everyone. We're in our month of athletes. And so we really wanted to hone in on really talking with the athletes to see, how they're accomplishing what they're accomplishing. Some of the tricks of the trade, so to speak, how they're eating, how they're working out. Like, these are things that I think a lot of people would love to just sit down and go, okay, tell me how you got those muscles. So it's an important question. We'd all like to know. So I'm glad you're here so you can help share that.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so, well, tell us a little bit about you. Actually, I'm going to tell my story about Devin first.
Ooh, I have a story about Devin too. Oh, we all have stories about Devin.
So I actually told the story at the last podcast.
Well, you can tell it again.
But now he's here. So you heard about him last week. Now you're seeing him in person. But yeah, a while back, one of our favorite patients said, you need to work with Devin. And because he knew I was going to the gym, and I think it's because he was looking at the way I look, going, yeah, you need to work with Devin.
You need some help.
How long you been working out? But that's one of the things we're going to talk about, right? Because a lot of people in the gym are working out hard. Yeah. They're putting the effort and not seeing any results.
Some people are also sitting on the machines and taking videos, which I have found does not always lead to muscle growth, sometimes atrophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. For
Yep.
sure.
Watch out for those videos.
Yes.
So anyway, so I ran into Devin at the gym. This was a different gym we were going at, One Life Fitness, and Devin said, "Let's just work out together one time." I said, "All right." I know how to work out. I didn't know how to work out.
You thought you knew how to work
I
out.
thought I knew. So an hour later, I can't move. I can't lift my arms. I'm going, that's called working out. Okay, it's a little different. So then Devin actually trained me for over a year.
Yeah.
And we were trained together for 3 times a week. I was lifting 5 or 6 times a week, but 3 times a week together. And I saw changes. So I was 44 and a half at the time. And so when I turned 45, I said, okay, I'm going to bodybuild for 10 years. I guess I bit the bug, got infected.
No
Big
cure.
time.
So then we got into, packing meals and counting macros and measuring foods and all that stuff. And so I'm 5 years into the journey. Tomorrow I turn 50.
Yeah.
So,
Happy birthday.
Halfway there.
Yeah.
Oh,
I got
that's so funny. And halfway there.
5
No.
years left. So we brought Devin because, you guys might want to hear some of his stories. You heard from Blake and Mark last time. And so now here's Devin. So tell us about you, your journey, your start, and what makes you who you are.
Yeah. Great. Thanks. And again, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a close personal friend of you guys, and it's really wonderful to share in this journey and this venture that you've launched here, and happy to be a part of it. So my story, goes back pretty far. My father, and this is an important message for your listeners, and certainly for a lot of my clients and people I've engaged with in the gym over the many years, is a lot of people that I run into are at very sedentary points in their life, places where they're trying to come back to fitness or find fitness for the first time, like in your case. And in many cases, these people have children. And again, not to jump into any sort of get over our skis and jump in just any sort of giant societal issues right off the bat. But childhood obesity is out of control in this country.
Huge.
And
100%.
And so when we look at that, we have to see, what are these children modeling after? And oftentimes it's their parents. So when I talk to people who are looking to seek my services as a trainer, and they're trying to find a love for fitness, I instill in them the importance of showing the right way for their children, right? Because that is the message that resonates most strongly with me, because from my earliest memories, my father was a bodybuilder. And my father's well known in the community in the city of Frederick. And he recently competed in the MPC at 64 years old and won.
Kudos to you, because that's amazing.
Yeah. So I don't want to lose the importance of that message, and that my father didn't have to stand on a soapbox and preach to his children the importance of physical fitness. He just lived it every single minute of every day, still does. And so to me, when you talk about being a young man and looking to role models, looking for people to lead the way, to demonstrate to you, to model for you the behavior of how to be a man, yeah, I couldn't ask for any better experience than my father growing up. I was also a child of the 80s. I was born in 1985.
We forgive you for that.
I know, but but keep in mind, like when I would walk down a grocery store or toy store shelves, our turtles had 6-packs, right? So
That's very true.
So it was a very different time, right? Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the Arnold Schwarzenegger era, the action icon era, where the leading men in these movies were their own special effects, you know, and it was because of their physiques. And so bodybuilding was really going through an incredible resurgence, and it was coming into the mainstream. You know, Arnold made it happen in the 70s, but it really started to become a phenomenon that kind of took the country by storm in the 80s and 90s, where many people argue the 90s was the ideal era for competitive bodybuilding. But all that being said, I was kind of a young man who was swept up in that. And so when I would go to the grocery store, I would see the magazines. You know, I had my father, so, you know, I would talk to him about stories. My dad was super welcoming and took me into the gym at a very young age. I would probably imagine around 14 years old. So I know this resonates with you, as you have young boys who you're bringing in and making part of the experience. And that really stuck with me. I don't know why. I played sports, but I didn't gravitate towards sports the way I gravitated towards bodybuilding. It was something my father and I really shared, and it was a way that we bonded and still do to this day. And, you know, if it's been a few months since I've talked to my father, a few weeks since I've checked in with him, I won't pick up the phone and call him. We'll meet for a workout, you know, so that's the way it still is. That's the way it's going to be. So that really kind of laid the foundation for my love of physical fitness. I started taking it very seriously. You know, I left the tutelage of my father after a few years, a young man in junior college, 18, 19 years old. And that's when I started to realize that, hey, bodybuilding is really, really appeals to me. And I know that you've touched on this in previous episodes. It was really profound when you asked, like, does the athlete pick bodybuilding, or does bodybuilding pick the athlete? And I agreed with the consensus that you guys came to, that bodybuilding kind of picks the athlete, because I think there's a certain strain of OCD that's required, just because I don't know of any other sport, and I may be naive in this assumption, but I don't know of any other sport where it controls literally every second of your waking day. Oh, yeah. So, you know, bodybuilding, people think, oh, it's just what you do in the gym. That could not be further from the truth. You know, I go to sleep thinking about bodybuilding. I wake up thinking about bodybuilding, and everything in between, literally. I'm eating for purpose. And so when I talk about my lifestyle, and I love to be asked questions about my lifestyle, because it typically usually spins people's heads around, just because it's so strange. And I've been called everything from a robot to an alien to anything you can imagine, you know, just because everything is so structured. Even by my own coaches who have prescribed me diet plans that include the same meal items every day, 7 days a week. They're like, you're like a dog, you know, and they mean it lovingly, but certainly I get the point. Is that like, oh wow, your taste buds just aren't there anymore. Like, you know, we don't know. Maybe I'll have my body committed to science after I pass away many years from now. But all that being said, it's just like there's so much about the lifestyle that takes such a unique individual to do it. And that's even before you get to the discomfort and the pain of the training. Right. You talk about dietary discipline. You talk about sacrificing nights out, late nights, social events, social gatherings. All of that stuff is as part of the process, as you can imagine. And there's a price to pay. So, you know, I feel like as a trainer and as a member of the fitness community here in Frederick, when I'm asked questions or when I'm pursued by specifically young men, 14, 15, 16 years old, who are trying to train, or they're swept up in the Fitstagram culture of today, and they want the result. How do I get this? How do I get to the end of the road? I try my darndest to sit down and talk to them as candidly as possible about the sacrifices it takes to get from where they are now to where they want to be, because I owe it to them, that level of honesty and transparency. It's a very, very difficult sport, but it's certainly one that's worthwhile and hopefully pays dividends. And
you know, you said I'm not sure what other sport, you know, has that kind of needs that kind of minute by minute.
Right.
And I think you're right. I don't think many do. But I think those athletes who treat it like that are the ones that end up being the goats, right? Like I remember hearing Tom Brady speak last year, and whether or not you love Tom Brady or not, he's still one of the greatest of all time, right?
Yeah.
And so to hear him talk about his diligence, like on season, off season, and how he treated his body, he never let up. Like to this day, even when he's not playing, he's still following, that same regimen, dietary and whatnot. And so for him, that stringent lifestyle became his lifestyle.
He wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
He
So
changed his diet after 10 years of professional football.
Right.
Changed his diet and played for another 14 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think many other sports do. I 100% agree. But I think those people that treat it like true bodybuilders treat, their sport, I think those are the people we see go far beyond, the others.
Yeah.
There was one other thing you said. I need to dive into this because I know you have siblings.
I do.
Right? So because we're talking about parents and kids and like them living it out.
Yeah.
So are your siblings are they bodybuilders like you?
Great question. Really great question. And I love this question because it gives me the opportunity to humble brag about my siblings who are wonderful individuals. So I'm the middle of three. So I have an older brother and a younger sister. We all grew up very close. So my brother, although he's older, is only 17 months older. And my sister is just about 5 years younger. So even though, it was very important for my parents that even though she was the little sister, that my brother and I included her in everything. And as a result, she was always part of what we did,
Nice.
and I wouldn't have it any other way. But to your point, it's kind of a mix. My father lived fitness and he demonstrated fitness, but he did not preach it on us, right? Which is an important thing. He led by example.
Right.
And if we wanted to join him, we could. And he built a gym facility before home gyms were a thing, and it was nice and it was functional. And we would come down and we would exercise. And we had friends over in middle school and high school. We would just go down there and pick up some dumbbells and some barbells, move some things around. They thought it was amazing. You got a gym in your house, like this is really cool. So it was, and my father, a lot of the credit's laid at his feet for that, but. My sister, the quick answer to your question, Brandy, is no. I am the only one who is affected so heavily, and I'll explain why in a little bit. I'll loop back to that.
Child.
Yes.
Let's just call it what it is, folks. Those that have a middle child know what I'm talking about.
Is this a mental health podcast,
partially 50% of the time.
Yeah, perfect. So, the one thing that I really think is important is my parents preached meritocracy to the highest degree. And that is something that I think is very, very special and kind of lost today. We've certainly got away from it.
It has gotten lost.
It really has. Yeah. It's for no choice of a lot of individuals. I mean, my brother and my sister, again, a chance to humble brag about them. They were both awarded valedictorian. They both graduated with 4.0s.
That's incredible.
And they're also some of the last generations I can recall where a valedictorian was acknowledged at all, right? They just stopped doing it. They stopped giving kudos to the top placement on the graduating class. They just did away with it. And that's kind of part of what's leaning into the culture of getting away from meritocracy. They don't want anyone to stand out too tall amongst the others for fear of marginalizing anyone else. So all that to say is that I happen to take the need for that meritocracy, the need to explore excellence, and I just happen to funnel it into the physical bucket. Whereas my sister and my brother found other virtues, other venues, other avenues to explore their talents. And they both kind of chose science. Again, my brother got his master's in biology from Johns Hopkins University. My sister got her PhD at Harvard.
So they're kind of
they're okay, nerds. no, they're wonderful, wonderful people. But like they went down paths of excellence in their own way, and it's just very different. And my sister was an athlete always, even through college, awesome. Tennis, soccer, like she had to be moving. She was a dancer. So like she just explored physicality and exercise and movement in her own way. And my brother was just genetically very strong. He was just a gifted guy genetically, naturally. So there were times where he would ebb and flow with it. And in college, he was like, I'll do it. And then when he did it really well. And then when he didn't, he didn't. He just kind of moved in and out of it. And so I certainly think that he's going to find a spot later. They both have families, loving, wonderful, growing families. They're both married. And so that's really where their priorities are right now. And I don't have those same priorities and responsibilities, which allows me to engage in this a little bit more, certainly to the degree that I do.
That's it's nice to see. And the reason why I ask that is because, it's important for parents to know that not every child, even if you're living that lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to look like Devin, right? Unless you're willing to put in the time and effort that Devin does. But your kids still see that. They still see the effort. They see you going to the gym, and like our kids want that. They're like, which one of us gets to go with you today? Like they don't want to go with mom nearly as much because they're boys, and they also don't want to see how strong I am. And
Right.
I mean, Navi doesn't mind. Him and I actually compete a little bit. So
There
when
you
he's
go.
benching, he's like, can you bench that? I'm like, I'm certainly going to try to beat you.
That's right.
So
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. That's
Yep.
fantastic.
So I just thought that was important though to point out, because not every kid is going to end up being a bodybuilder. Not
Yep.
every kid may end up loving the gym, but they still saw excellence.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And it just translated to a different area of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's okay too. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But,
The fact of the matter is, everyone has gifts and talents
oh yeah.
in their own realm,
Mm-hmm.
and those who feed those gifts and talents, kind of like the strength finders,
Yes.
where they talked about how you're much more likely to advance in your strengths than to try to bring up your weaknesses.
Right.
And so you should focus on your strengths.
I like
So then there's a desire, right? Like
Right.
the people who ask you, how can I get arms like Devin? And you go, well, because there's a story about there was a rookie who asked Kobe Bryant. So Kobe was the first one on the court every time practicing, and apparently this rookie showed up earlier than him one day, and so when he shows up, he's there, and he goes, I want to be just like you. Tell me what I got to do. I'm going to do everything. I'm your teammate. I know you wouldn't want me to be as good as you, because then we're on the same team. And Kobe said, of course, I want you to be great. You're never going to do it. What do you mean? Because you don't have time. You're out of time. He goes, I started this age. I put this many hours a day, every day since this age, never stopping. So you're already like 15 years behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You cannot catch up.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen. But the people who I guess, what I'm trying to say is a lot of people think they're working hard,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know that there's another level of working hard.
Well, some of us do know that, because I will say when I work out on my own, I'm just going to admit this, I can walk off the curb and I don't feel like I'm going to lose my legs. When I was doing some legs workouts with Devin, I was nervous to step off of the curb because I didn't know if my leg would support my body weight at that point. So I do think some of us know that maybe we have a little bit more in the tank that we're not using.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Can we pause at this point for an advertisement for my personal training?
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's going to bring in any business, Randy, but I appreciate the story.
Oh, yeah. But everyone needs to experience that.
Yeah.
Because I saw a saying in a runner's magazine. It said, you never know how far you can go until you risk going too far.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And what was it in the last podcast or two podcasts ago? I think Blake said, or was it Mark? I think Mark said, if Blake wasn't there, I wouldn't have gone to true failure on leg press.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, what is one common thing that most people are afraid of? Failure.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's literally what we're telling people to do when we go into the gym or when you're training them. You're like, I want you to go, in most cases, to the point of failure or even past failure. Right. Yeah. But if we're in there alone, and this just came to me, but if we're in there alone, we're literally fighting against that fear of failure, right? Yeah. Like it's still there, even though we're talking about something physical like that, it's still an innate fear that we constantly have to fight against to go the extra. Like you're still going to live. Yeah. It's going to be okay. Even if you fail, you're going to live. Yeah. So because there's a great thing on the other side of that failure, which in most cases there always is, right?
So, I mean, you need that person who trains with you and gets to know you, and then they realize you're not at your limit. you know, and sometimes
Yeah.
and we mentioned this as well. We said the professional needs a coach to make him rest. The amateur needs the coach to push him to go further.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think that's very good. And yeah, and Doc, to bring it back to your original point, you know, we are all blessed with certain, just as you said, we're blessed with certain strengths, and as far as what we do, what we can contribute, what we excel at. Especially in the realm of bodybuilding, we're blessed with certain strengths genetically about what muscles develop
Right.
quicker, better, faster, you know, more
I mean,
responsive.
clearly your biceps develop very quickly.
So that is probably, you know, and I've been training with a fair amount of regularity for about 20 years now. And that is the one question I've gotten more than anything else is compliments on my arms, references about my arms, mentions of my arms. And I get that question all the time, especially from young men.
What's your most frustrating body part, Kevin?
My most frustrating is back. My most frustrating is my back. And again, but that kind of makes sense because in the pull complex, the biceps are inherently and intimately attached to the pull complex, right? So if you have strong biceps, like I do, it's not altogether unexpected that you'd have weak lats because as they're harder to develop that neural connection to because you can't see them, right? So it's hard to really contract through the latissimus. And if you have strong biceps, they're just like, oh, we got this. And I'm like, no, guys, I need you to stop. Like, please, can we let the lats do the work? You know, so that for me is something that my coach and I continue to really focus on and move through. But the question I often get asked was, how can I get arms like you? And with, you know, at the risk of sounding controversial or rude, my answer is you can't, right? And I'm as honest about that as I can be, because for a few reasons. One, because the comparison is the thief of joy, right? We live
100%.
in a culture now of social media where we're constantly being inundated with the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1%. And everyone thinks that they can just do that or be that or capture that. Every young man wants to be Chris Bumstead. None of them will be Chris Bumstead. Right, Chris Bumstead is no longer even Chris Bumstead. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. We're all getting older, right, including Chris. So, I tell them you can't have arms like mine, but you can have better arms than you have now, right? And you can be better than you are today. And as long as you keep that in mind and keep moving forward under those pretenses, you're going to be a lot farther along in 6 months than you thought possible. And then in 12 months, you won't even recognize yourself. So it's just a change of mindset, right? Everyone wants to play Frankenstein and grab pieces of other people and bolt them onto their own body and create this perfect vision for themselves. But you know, it's a difficult thing for people to wrestle with. But they need people. You know, I feel I owe it to the fitness community and my community to be as honest as I can, to just say, hey, you know what? That's not the goal. That's not the question. How can it be like you? The question is, how can you be the best you?
Right.
And
it's
what's
hard.
realistic, and what are you willing to leave on the table in order to get, you know, as close to that as possible?
That's right. That's right.
Because it's not an easy feat.
You're right, Brandy. And to you know, I always will run into a few individuals that are like, oh, I see what you're saying. I can take it. I can do it. And then we'll triage. We'll go a little bit further. And be like, what sacrifices are you willing to make?
Right.
Now let's talk about your diet. Now let's talk about your sleep. Now let's talk about this. This. Then once we start to paint the picture, what the lifestyle really looks like to support that sort of growth and transformation, it gets much more different.
Well, are we okay to talk about that? Because I think
I'd love to.
I think that's one thing we did not capture was a day in the life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of people who go, okay, they meal prep, they prepare their food in advance. I can do that. It's not as easy as it sounds. Just that alone.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? What time do you get up? How much sleep do you get? What are you eating throughout the day?
Great question. Stop me at any time for questions.
Oh, I will.
Please. Happy to help. Happy to go off on tangents. So I am 38 years old. I'll be 39 in October. Again, I've been training for 20 years, training much more seriously in the last 8 to 10 with competition in mind. You know, my goal, I'm really, really excited to be doing this now because we're at a pivotal point in my own personal career where it's very transformative. So you know, I've always felt like over these last 20 years, I've been learning so much, but you never learn enough, right? And you're always a student and you're never going to learn it all. So I learn more about my body season to season, year to year. Some things work, some things don't. We try things, we fail, we succeed. Let's move forward. So for me, I'm a classic physique competitor. So what that means is based on my height, there is an actual hard weight cap that I have on stage. So the judges, the federations, the OCB or the NPC, they have designated, if you're a male of 6'1" height, which I am, they say you need to be no heavier on stage than 224 pounds. Okay. So for those of us that know a little bit more about physiology and what that kind of composition looks like, 224 pounds of lean stage tissue is a massive amount of muscle.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot.
Because again, you're thinking about 224 pounds in the context of about a real 5 to 7% body fat. Which is pretty absurd. That's a lot of meat on your frame. So that means that individual athlete in their off season at 6'1" is probably comfortably walking around at anywhere from 250 to 260 pounds. Wow. When you put the water back in, the salt back in, just to have them in a healthy off season shape, which is massive at 6'1".
That's
very massive. So that's what we're looking toward. So I say that, Brandy, to kind of set the framework for the path that's ahead of us. Okay. So again, I sit here on this wonderful podcast with you today at 38 years old, 39 in October, 6'1", 226 pounds in the morning. Okay. Fasted. So again, when I say we need to get to about 250 pounds off season to come back to a stage lean of 224, that's what I mean. So that's our goal. So as a team, as an athlete, that's my focus right now, is how can I get up to a sustainable and reasonable 250, 260 pounds, build the tissue we need. And it takes a village. I have a coach, I have a team, I have a whole group of people around me. I have multiple training partners on various days of the week who are willing to drop everything and train with me because they know I need to have somebody to push me in a certain way and be exactly as you said, Doc. You need somebody that knows you. You need somebody that knows your strengths, your weaknesses, when you want to quit, when you want to give up, what to do to kind of edge you on or get under your skin or push you a little bit harder. And how they need to know when you're cheating yourself, and they need to be able to look at you and be like, Devin, you had more, let's do another set. Let's do another rep. And that's what you expect at this level. So we tailor everything towards the accomplishment of these aims. Okay. And there's no facet of my lifestyle that's not fully locked down and controlled. And I can hear some of your viewers right now, their eyes rolling back in their head because it's just an immense amount of discipline.
It is.
We're going to talk to you guys too. I mean, we're going to actually address your concerns as well.
Yeah.
So, but first, why don't you see what the pros do? Then we'll come back to, hey, what do you want to do? And it all depends on what your goals are. So it all depends on your goals. But so go ahead.
Yeah. So every day for me, we'll start right into it. And again, stop me with questions anytime. Every morning for me, 7 days a week starts at 3 a.m. Okay. So it starts at 3 a.m. because bed was at 7 p.m. the night before. So when I say that means that in the summer months, I am lying in bed with sun coming through the window on my face. Like that's pretty clear.
We need to talk about some better drapes for you, sir. That's not good for your sleep
Right.
cycle.
Yeah. A lot of that's on me.
We'll talk about that offline. Don't do that, people.
But the point being is the fact is it's early. It's an early bedtime. I acknowledge that. But if I'm going to wake up at 3 and I need 8 hours of sleep roughly, I need to schedule that in, right? And that's the way it needs to be scheduled in. So we're winding down by 7 p.m. I can fall asleep pretty much anywhere, anytime. Blessed with that, with that talent and skill. So I'm in bed by 7, actually asleep most often by 7, and up at 3 like a crack. So the thing that I'm doing is there's a routine. Everything's routine, and the routine starts. So when we spoke about how all-encompassing the bodybuilding pursuit is, it really does start there. It starts from kind of the moment your eyes open. Okay, the first thing I'm doing is I'm stepping on a scale, right? Why? Because I need to record my fasted weight 7 days a week and send that to my coach in my spreadsheet, right? So I barely
use the
have
bathroom
this
before I weigh.
And I do too.
Okay.
To be very transparent.
That's important.
I can't have that messing up my numbers.
No.
So yeah, I'm barely even awake. I still got sleep in my eyes, and I'm at my laptop on my Excel spreadsheet, transcribing data points in, from my coach for my check-in week to week. But that just starts things off. So then there's a morning round of supplementation. So usually with about 20 ounces of water, there's a fiber supplement, and there's a whole round of health and wellness supplements that are typically taken first thing in the morning on empty stomach. Okay. So then I can do things. It depends. If we're in prep, I might do things like vacuum exercises for the transverse abdominis to keep the waistline tight. Some stretches. Obviously, I am a patient of chiropractic, so I'll go through some of my exercises at that point, especially if anything's feeling in particularly tight. As we start to put on tissue, you gain tissue, and I particularly gain a lot of tissue across my chest and shoulders pretty quickly. They're quick to respond. So for me, depending on how I slept the night before, I'm a side sleeper, so I'll fall asleep on my back, but I can kind of rotate from side to side throughout the night. There can be a lot of impingement. There can be a lot of mobility issues as the shoulders continue to grow and grow. So it's just about getting loose, getting stretched, because I'm a morning workout person. So I'm building towards that workout, and that workout starts at 5 o'clock. So I'll typically get in there around 4:30. So, but as an athlete in an off season, there's pre-workout nutrition, which is very, very important. So if I know I'm training at 5, I need to fuel the body with appropriate food and nutrients 60 minutes before that. So again, that's another question I get most often, guys, is if you're going to the gym at 5, why are you waking up at 3? Right? They're like, I'd be up at 4:45 and rolling into the gym.
Which is why you'll never have these biceps.
And that's when I'm like, oh, you need to understand that the meal, I'm eating a full meal 60 minutes prior to that workout, because that's the glycogen. Those are the carbohydrates that are fueling the energy, the simple sugars, the carbohydrates, the glycogen that's fueling my performance in that workout.
Well, that's the biggest difference, though, between a bodybuilder and a non-bodybuilder, right? Bodybuilders eat to fuel the body, to give the body what it needs in order to build the muscle or the tissue that you're looking to build.
Yeah.
Other people who are not bodybuilders eat because their stomach thinks they're hungry.
Right.
That's the biggest difference.
Yes.
Right?
Or worse yet, they're feeding their cravings.
Correct.
Because the body will talk to you and it'll crave certain things, but it craves what it's used to and what you've been feeding it. So if you're eating a lot of sugar, you're going to crave more sugar.
If you put a bagel in your mouth first thing in the morning and that's it, that's probably what you're going to be craving a little bit later.
Yeah.
So not that carbs are bad. Carbs are actually important. So that's not what we're saying.
100%. No bad macros.
That's
bad
right.
macros. Yeah. So yeah, you just raised such a great point, Brandy, because it's so much about what bodybuilders do is functionally driven, right? So the foods I'm eating, the type of food I'm eating. So there'll be fruit, like in that pre-workout meal, there's fruit, because it's simple sugar that can be, the fructose can be broken down and converted into glycogen fairly easy. The pre-workout nutrition is all about on-demand energy in the form of glycogen, because we're going to be lifting heavy and we're going to be lifting hard for about an hour and a half. So we, as a progressive overload hypertrophy training bodybuilder, I track all my workouts. I track all my reps, all my sets. So I need to know what I did last week. I need to beat that performance this week. I need to continuously subject the body to increased stimulus. If the body did it last week, it's adapted to what it did last week. It's not going to grow. It has no reason to grow. Muscle growth is a stress response. So we have to make sure we're applying the appropriate stress level to maximize that growth and catalyze that muscle growth. So that's my job. That's my job, is to go in there and just beat myself to pieces. And so, Brandy, another phenomenal point you've raised is about not only pre-workout nutrition, but intra-workout nutrition is an area that will just blow people's minds. I can't tell you how hard it is for me to get clients I train to bring a water bottle to the gym. And I'm like, guys, this is 101. Like, you need at least tell me that you need a break so you can go drink the water fountain. Like, some people won't even do that. They're like, Coach, I don't feel okay. Can I ask you for a water break? Yes. The answer is obviously yes. But I try to preach to people the importance of, if nothing else, having on-hand hydration, because it's so important. But then you'd compare, exactly. But I'd like to compare that to so what does the bodybuilder do? So at the bare minimum, all of your listeners should be embracing adequate hydration on a daily basis and during a workout, certainly. But what we have to understand is perspiration isn't about the loss of water alone, right? You're losing electrolytes. So all of that is uniquely and intimately tied to muscle function. So when we talk about sodium in particular. So how does a bodybuilder prepare for a workout? Well, my intra-workout cocktail actually starts with a base of about 48 ounces of water. So it's I have the largest shaker cup currently made by man. I think that's been acknowledged by the Guinness Book of World Records. It's massive. It's a thermos. So I carry that around because it's so full of stuff, right? And what is that stuff? So it starts with about a quarter tablespoon of Himalayan sea salt. Why? Because of the electrolytes, right? Sodium out, sodium in. The muscle needs to function. It needs to contract efficiently. So I need to make sure I have mineral salt on hand, water, coconut water for additional electrolytes, potassium, sodium. But there's things like amino acids, creatine, glutamine, different BCAAs, EAAs. So a lot of amino acids in a lot of forms. So many acronyms. That's what's in the 48 ounces, just acronyms. And so it's this massive thing, and it's like, and there's a nitric oxide product, there's a pump product, there's all of these things that come together, that the intention is to just keep me performing at an adequate or higher than adequate level for an hour and a half. And it takes all of that,
Well, I appreciate that you called it a cocktail, because 20% of our listeners just went, what? Yes. I can drink while I work out?
That's right.
That kind of cocktail.
Not that. Yeah. The last third of it is Bloody Mary.
I was talking with a patient yesterday. I was here at the North office, and they go, my goodness, you have lost so much weight. How do you do it? And I go, well, for starters, you got to hit at least 10,000 steps a day, and you got to drink at least a gallon of water. She goes, well, then I'm just going to stay fat. I'm like, those are the two easy things. I was just starting there. Yeah. That's beginning. There's way more. But if we can't do those two things, we might be in trouble. And she knew it right off the bat.
There you go. Well,
listen, there's 3 non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Right. Number 1, why?
Yeah.
If you don't have a strong enough why,
yeah,
you're not going to do it. Whether you just want to lose a few pounds or you want to look like Devin. You have to have a strong enough why. Yep. That why is going to drive you, push you, pull you, and keep you on course.
Right.
If the why is in the minute, the reason we all fall off track is because we didn't have a strong enough why.
Yeah.
It has to be something that just drives you. I don't know how else to say it. And most people have a weak why. A why, you want to do this. I want to look good. Okay, that's good. Really good. But wanting to look, everybody wants to look good. You know, like, how bad? Why do you want to look good? Go 10 levels deep. Yeah. Well, I want to look good because I want a healthy relationship. Okay, well, why do you want that? Why do you want that? Go deeper. And then you're going to get 10 to 20 levels deep of why. Then you're going to figure out what your why truly is. I think my why ended up being, I need my outside to represent who I am on the inside. Because I am a driven person when it comes to business, parenting, marriage, everything else. But you wouldn't know that looking at me. I need you to know that looking at me, so I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
I just want to show you. Especially if I'm coaching, if I'm leading, if I'm helping, if I'm their chiropractor, they need to see that. So that's my why. Find your why. That's non-negotiable. Don't start till you have a why. Number 2, you have to understand it's multifactorial. It's not just doing the 10,000 steps and the gallon of water.
Right.
You do more than a gallon of water.
I do.
Yes.
So it's everything. It's not one thing. It's not 2 things.
Right.
It's everything. It's a minimum of 5 or 6 things that you have got to do from all different dimensions. So everything is multifactorial, not one. So it's not one thing that you do. That's number 2. The third non-negotiable is now you got to be willing to work so hard that you're ready to collapse. You got to go after it with ferocity. You've got to be willing to do so much, like when Roger Bannister was trying to break the 4-minute mile, and then a lot of people did after that, but no one had ever done it. He said it's physiologically impossible. A doctor actually told him, they said, you have to run further and faster than you can. It's like, how do you do that? He goes, you got to go till you collapse. You gotta, how many people are willing to, literally, he would run till everything would turn black and he would faint. And he wouldn't slow down when his body's telling him to slow down and stop. And he would faint. And then the next time he would faint a little bit further. That's the definition of true failure.
Yeah,
literally,
for sure.
His body would shut down. I wonder if they had to resuscitate him. I mean, but there you go. So those are the 3 non-negotiables.
Okay, so we were
at the workout.
The cocktail.
Yeah,
so you drank the cocktail.
Yep. So that's
mid-workout.
That goes through the entire workout. So that intra workout will last me through the entire thing, which again is typically about an hour and a half, 2 hours if you add my stretching and pre-workout cardio and then the post cardio. But again, to your point you've made earlier, cardio for me in the off season is really just movement. Okay, because we don't want to rob the body of the glycogen it needs during cardio before the workout. So we want to be very cognizant about where we expel that energy. But more than that, the goal is to gain weight, right? So we want to move, but we don't want to necessarily, what we want to avoid is too much zone 2, right? So we want to kind of stay away from that heart rate that's really going to start to burn fat.
And
We're thinking turtle and peanut butter.
Yes, yes.
That's the kind of movement we're looking for.
Right. So what I'm being told, Doc, you raised a good question. Cozy cardio, yeah. So for me and most others, it depends. It depends on your age. Like you can find some graphs that kind of help you to delineate where the zones are for you, age, height, gender, and but basically it's based off heart rate. So how hard your body is working is what will designate where the zone is, and then that's basically shows where the energy reservation is coming from. So are you going to be burning more calories? Are you going to be burning more fat stores? So for athletes, for bodybuilders like myself who are perhaps in a prep phase where the goal is to kind of maintain muscle tissue, stay away from anything catabolic, but also burn fat while maintaining muscle, zone 2 is really the sweet spot, which is why you see so many bodybuilders and athletes doing incline treadmill walking, stair mill, like, and for most people, like, man, why don't you just go out and run? You know what I'm saying? We're like, whoa.
Whoa, now you've taken it too far.
Exactly. Watch your mouth. Don't use that word. But like for most bodybuilders and athletes, it's about steady state cardio, right? Because that's where you can really kind of control the physiology to get into that zone 2 for optimal fat loss. So right now we're actually kind of avoiding that for the most part, but we want movement, right? So I have, like you, Brandy, and like your friend who asked you, I have a step count, a daily step count, and I need to be moving 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day. Bare minimum. Rest day or active day doesn't matter. And I bought, one of these just to track that metric, because I didn't know. And you don't know what you don't know. And that's such an important thing for your listeners to realize, is that, like, if I asked you how many steps that you take a day on average and you don't know, trust me when I say you really don't know. Because
if you're sitting at a desk,
yes.
You might struggle to get 3,000.
That's not a joke. That's not a joke. And you're like, surely I get 8,000 a day on average. No, 3,500. 4,000.
No, I got mad at my watch, matter of fact, because I was sure it was lying to me. So he told me put it on my shoe when I'm doing my cardio.
But she was holding on to the sides of the treadmill.
Right.
I go, if your hand's not moving, it's not
right. It's not registering as a step. That's actually a good point. Yeah, depending on the technology you're wearing, it may or may not be that sophisticated. Right. Put it on your shoe. I like that. Yeah. So
ceiling fan.
Exactly. That's cheating.
Then you count steps when you're sleeping.
But yeah, so it's to the point where that's really what my obligation is to my cardio, and that's what I'm doing pre and post workout, is I'm just getting that movement. So again, I won't even get up into zone 2, which is typically for me is a heart rate around 120 to 130 beats per minute. So I'll stay below that because it's just movement, and I want to get that movement, and it helps me to stay healthy. It helps me to feel good. It helps me to optimize my metabolism, because we're pushing a lot of food, and we're going to be pushing more food. So when the workout is done, my day is far from over, right? Again, at this point, it's 7:30, in the morning on average. I have a full-time career. I'm also a trainer. So I'm either meeting with clients, and that's when the work part of being a bodybuilder begins. And what that means is a few things. One, hit your meals, hit your water, control cortisol, right? So that's easier said than done, as you guys especially know as entrepreneurs and business owners. Is you never know what life's going to throw at you. Mm-hmm. So my job is, in trying to be a professional, trying to be a successful professional in a career, is also trying to control my stress levels. So that's what I owe it to myself, and I owe it to my progress to try to control that as best I can. So I just kind of, there's things I can't get around. If there's a tough meeting that day, a tough discussion, if I'm traveling across the country for a conference, there's certain things that you just have to kind of grin and bear, and you do your best to prepare, because preparation can overcome a lot of that. But there's some things you can't, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches, and you kind of have to adapt a mindset that stress and cortisol is an enemy to your physical progress.
I want to talk about that a little bit, because I know when you first said that, people are like, what do you mean? You had a tough meeting or a tough day and you have to control cortisol. What does that have to do with it? So I think for a lot of people, they don't understand, number one, what cortisol is, when it gets released in the body, why it gets released in the body, and why it's necessary at sometimes. Because if our body is creating it, we need cortisol for certain things, right? Certain processes. But there's also a detriment when our cortisol continually gets spiked throughout the day or at wrong times. Yeah. So can we process through that just a little bit, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
What is cortisol?
Cortisol is the opposite of growth hormone. That's the simple of it.
Wow.
Because growth hormone makes you grow.
Mm.
So cortisol makes things break down. Now, cortisol is necessary for survival. It's necessary for short-term immune system. The cortisol is necessary to handle stress, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But just like every other hormone needs to be balanced, just like the hormone insulin and glucagon need to be balanced, and every hormone has that. Testosterone and estrogen need to be balanced, and that you have to have both.
Yes.
So there's nothing bad that the body makes, but how we control that cortisol, that's your department.
Yeah, and thank you. Again, I certainly wasn't going to overspeak the doctor in the room when we talked about the initial cortisol explanation. So I'll kind of frame it in a different way for your viewers and your listeners, and I'll keep it kind of particular to the physical space. Cortisol is the enemy to most people's physical goals because, for lack of a better word, and please, Doc, you correct me here if I get too far over my skis, it's the fight or flight response. So that's what Dr. Amir was saying when he's like, it's necessary for stress. In a truly stressful situation, that's absolutely true. But the problem,
chasing you.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. The problem is we live in a society now that's so relatively safe, God bless us all, is that we aren't under nearly as much stress as our body thinks we are, or we're led to believe we are by the stimulus and the things that we're doing throughout our regular days, right? So no longer are we on the look over our shoulder for a saber-toothed tiger to jump out of the woods. We're looking at a TPS report that was due by noon and it's 11:45, right?
Or the person that just cut us off.
Exactly. So I'll pull this back to the realm. So we're dealing with a hormone that's released during the body's very natural fight or flight response. The problem is that when the body's engaged in too much sympathetic, parasympathetic activity, the body is such a wonderful mechanism that it wants to lock everything down, right? So effectively, with too much stress hormone, everything is kind of frozen. So we also have to understand that for vanity and performance purposes, a lot of what I do in my space is, how do I want to say this? It does not benefit my survival, right? So bodybuilding is something that can only exist in a modern age, right? let's be very, very clear. If I get to a point, and I hope to one day in a few months or years be back on this podcast and share with you my continued journey at 265 pounds.
Oh, you're coming back on.
Oh yeah, happy to do it. And I'll be here, but you have to understand that nothing benefits me being that size, right? That's literally like owning a Ferrari and living in a jail cell, right? So you're living in a 16 by 16 and you're just like, you're driving from one end to the other with a Ferrari and you're like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. It's not efficient. It's not energy efficient. The body doesn't want it, right? So just like fat, although we might not look good in a swimsuit on the beach or at the community pool, it's a survival mechanism, right? It's stored energy for future use. We might not like the way it looks. We might not like the way it feels, but to the body, it's necessary and it's been put there for a reason, right? So if we're constantly stressed out and cortisol is constantly being released, but we want to lose 10 pounds before we go on that summer vacation, the body's going to lock everything down, right? So as you're trying to do all this cardio and burn off this fat, but you're just stressing yourself out and constantly in a stress response, the body is not going to want to adapt to anything because it doesn't know. You've placed your body in a nearly constant state of uncertainty. So it doesn't want to move. And I've had this with so many close friends of mine they'll see what I'm doing, and I'm always trying to be so transparent and welcoming to other people about what stage of my own journey I'm on, and then include them and try to support them in what they're doing. And it frustrates me when they don't have as much success, or they're really trying hard, and I see their efforts, and I know they're trying hard, but their body isn't responding in the way that they want it to. And I'm like trying to dig that next level deeper. I'm like, well, what's going on? And then more often than not, I find that there's a myriad of stressors outside of the gym that are just driving these people crazy. Well, my dog just died, and I'm doing this, and I'm moving, and I'm switching careers, and it's like, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, I see what the problem is here. Right? It's cortisol again. It's like I feel like I'm Fred from Scooby-Doo. I'm dating myself now, pulling on the red herring mask. It's just cortisol. Just constantly that guy who's the villain of every story, right? And so So that's in my context. That's what I deal with. So as an athlete myself, it's really essential that I do what I need. I need to perform at a high level when I need to perform. But it just helps me understand the importance of really locking down everything else, right? I have to find that balance where I let into my life only the acceptable level of stress, because it is necessary. It's unavoidable for all of us.
And it is important to your health too, right? Because if we try to avoid all stresses, we're actually avoiding everything in life, because you cannot control everything. But our body, just like the stress of lifting weights is what develops you, the stress itself also is what develops us, and our ability to handle that. Not to mention having a reference point that we can look back on and go, oh, I handled that and I lived to tell the tale. So now your body has a reference point to go, oh no, this is going to be okay, which allows us to handle that stress the next time much better.
Yeah.
You know, I was reading about a bodybuilder, and I can't remember, this was probably 20 years ago, when I was just reading this stuff about cortisol and hormones and physiology, and I think there was a book called Natural Hormonal Enhancement was the name of the book. Can't remember exactly, but it talked about a particular group of bodybuilders and their trainer, and they would, through saliva tested, be able to measure cortisol levels minute by minute almost.
Yeah.
And they figured out that when they would start lifting, imagine there's a graph, growth hormone would start to go up, and cortisol literally dips.
Yeah.
But then there's this period of time where growth hormone starts to go down and cortisol starts to come up. And then there's a level where they're both around the same place. He said that they would figure out what that moment was, and they could be in the middle of a set. They would drop the weights and walk out of the gym, because they knew the minute cortisol went higher than growth hormone, and it was a different time and different people, but on average it was like, I want to say it was like 47 minutes into a workout.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, nobody's workout is that short. I mean, some people, I guess.
Okay, I was in a rush today.
That's true. Yeah, your workouts are very short.
I didn't create that.
I
just
think you need
that.
more Himalayan pink salt.
Could help.
Now I'm feeling stressed. My cortisol just went through the roof.
HPS. There's an acronym for you. But so these guys would drop the weights and walk out, because their belief was, and I don't know how true this is, their mental belief was that every rep after that would break down tissue, not build.
Sure.
And so they would measure and see. So growth hormone took a full 48 hours to go back to the baseline where it was for them to be able to lift again. So they never lifted 2 days in a row.
Interesting.
And apparently they got great results. But I mean, that's taking science to the extreme.
Sure.
And there were sprinters who would literally stick a pin in their thigh muscle and do like a semi-biopsy and measure lactic acid levels. And it was the same thing. They were like, okay, you can only do 14 sprints in each workout. You can't do more, because then you're not going to keep building speed and strength. And so, I mean, you can take it a little bit too far.
Sure.
However, having said all of that, because everybody's like, okay, I have 47 minutes. I'm going to stop working out from now on. I'm not going to work out past that. I can tell you the most successful bodybuilders train much longer than that. Yeah. So you can't... I don't know if the science is accurate, especially when all you do is look at one factor. All you're doing is looking at cortisol and growth hormone. You're missing a boat. Like I said earlier, one of the non-negotiables is there's many factors that play into this.
But I will say, if that's what they're testing and that's what their belief is, the odds are at 47 minutes, their tissue is going to begin to break down. So that's probably best.
Because that guy should walk out.
Right. But that's, that also we have to touch on, because the mental aspect of bodybuilding, I think, is as big as everything else combined, right? Because you have everything you have to do, right? You have to get your workouts in, your nutrition has to be spot on, you have to get your sleep, you have to get your supplementation, but you can do all that. And if your headspace isn't right, you are not going to you're not going to yield the results.
We talked about this last time with Blake and Mark too. Headspace is almost everything. I think headspace is minimum 50%, because the body adapts to anything you put it under. Why do you have Navy SEALs who can sleep 12 minutes?
Right.
and go 24 hours. And all they need is a short little nap.
Right.
And they're good to go. And they perform at these highest levels in the most stressful situations I can ever think of, with bullets flying at you. And you're a team of like 5-6 people going against a giant army, and you succeed.
Yeah.
And you can do it on less than an hour of sleep.
And Devin's like, I'm not doing it on less than 8.
I need my 8.
They probably take extra acronyms.
Yeah. I would eat way too many rations too. They'd take me out of there real quick.
Like the MREs are 2,000 calories.
That's okay. I'll need 4 of them.
Each meal is like 2,000 calories.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they have to be very calorie dense, because you don't know when you're going to get another one, especially when you're out on deployment on a mission. But yeah, so I really think you were touching on some really profound ideas there, Doc. And I think that in a nutshell, that's why, although they weren't so meticulous about tracking the correlation necessarily between cortisol and growth hormone, I think that's why California had the appeal it had in the 1970s and 80s. Think about it, because it was seen as a paradise for bodybuilders, right?
Yeah,
Why? It's because the weather, the beach, the sand, the salt, the ocean, the glitz, the glamour. I mean, that Arnold's lifestyle in the 1970s, when you read about it, when you hear about it, you'd be like, how could this dude spend 6 hours in the gym a day? Well, that's because the rest of his day he was laying on the beach,
getting a really good time.
because you realize there was such a contradiction of an incredible amount of excessive work and then relaxation. Like you knew back then that there was a big part of that was just about enjoying the sun and the sand of California. And also the active weight training is very helpful for metabolizing and utilizing cortisol. So they were using it, they were keeping it down, and then they were living a beach boy lifestyle, So I think that's what drew a lot of athletes out there. So as they would start to get up and they would start to show promise, Joe Weider would court them out to the West Coast of the United States and say, hey, we'll take care of everything. You just do what you do best. You just train, you just, model on my publications, write some articles, and do what you do best. And that's kind of why that was such a successful era, I think. And I think if you watch a documentary like Pumping Iron, all of those guys looked amazing. Yes, Arnold is the runaway star, but there are so many physiques in that documentary where you're like, what's in the water out there? Like, everybody looks... a lot of pink and sea salt. But you're like, man, there really was something magical about it. And maybe that's a big component of it. It's just the way it would help people control their stress.
And just being around the right people, I think that rubs off.
Yeah.
I said it last time. When we train at Unrivaled, we're stronger.
Yeah.
Just because everybody else there is stronger. It's naturally, you just lift heavier weights.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Maybe they're fake weights.
Pretty sure looking at a few people, they're not.
But yeah, so to bring it all back to what kind of the day in the life is, Brandy and Doc, that's really what the rest of the day is about. That's my mission, is to do what I need to do, let in only the acceptable amount of stress, control everything else, move a little bit if I need to move, but hit your supplements, hit your meals, hit your water, hit the things that you need to do, drill the fundamentals, and get rest and get ready to sleep and do it again.
And I think the big thing is, if you've never done it, then the best way to be successful is to get with somebody who has.
Yeah.
I mean, because the bottom line is, we all need a coach. If we want to hit our goals, or we have this vision of what we want our physique or our lives to be, and we don't know how to get there because we've never been there, well, then the best thing to do is invest in yourself by hiring somebody who has been there, right? Who knows that pathway. It's hard as it is, but when you have somebody guiding you and encouraging you, it's way more possible. So I think that's one thing that you just need to know, is if you haven't done it, find somebody who has.
I want to definitely bring you back, because I want to discuss one topic that it just came to me now, but it's a deep topic, which is workout philosophy or training philosophy. Because you look at these guys you mentioned, Mike Mentzer comes to mind. He would train each body part once every 9 days, and he wouldn't hit it again. He literally trained total of like 3 days every 9 days, and he would every body part, and he would rest for 6 days, not doing anything, and he looked pretty amazing too.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger, who would do 3 hours in the morning,
Right.
3 hours in the afternoon, and he trains 6 days a week. So you're looking at 12 workouts a week, each one being 3 hours long. And then there was, who was the gentleman you met?
Frank Zane.
Frank Zane was kind of in the middle of that, but he had long, grueling workouts. So I think at some point, and certainly we're out of time today, but let's bring you back. Let's talk about those, and then helping people figure out what works for them, and then let's bring it down from that elite bodybuilder to, hey, you're starting out, you still need to train like a bodybuilder, because the odds of you getting big or too big are so slim.
If you know the secret, let me know, please.
So you still have to do those 3 non-negotiables.
Come up with another excuse, because that one's not valid, is what he's saying.
Yeah, it's not.
You know what could be fun too? So I think we should do that. And I think it would be really fun sometime. We've talked about doing a live event sometime. We should do a panel and have Mark and Blake and have Devin come back on and allow people to ask questions and to just kind of peer behind the curtain. Ask the wizards.
Great.
I think that would be a lot of fun.
We need a couple of lady bodybuilders too, I think, if we have a panel.
I think we have have some, right, that we
Yeah.
know about.
Yeah, I've got some people I can talk to.
Got a couple of pros in our
Yeah,
group.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
and if your viewers and listeners are interested at all, please, I know you guys do this on YouTube, so comment on YouTube. Any questions, any specific questions? I'm Frederick. I'm born and raised in this city. My goal is to be one of the premier athletes in this city, from this city, and bring it back to this city. So I really care about this community. I care about fitness in general, and I'd love for you guys to be a part of the process. My process, if you want to be, because it's a very lonely road. It's a very selfish sport, but your community is everything. And so if you guys have questions, if you want to be kept in the loop about what's going on, again, we're going to be building. So the next time you see me, if you see me in months, weeks, in this next episode, it should look different. If I'm doing my job, I'll look very different than I look now. And it'll continue to make very big, drastic changes up and down. But again, any questions, anything you're interested in, any topics, either save it for the panel or submit it, and we'll get to it, because I love just sharing the wealth of knowledge and
100%.
getting people excited about fitness.
Absolutely. And if you like these kinds of conversations and these topics, please make sure that you subscribe, make sure and hit the bell so that you know when new content pops up for you. We have some more great shows scheduled, so do that. Subscribe and share.
Awesome.
I'm pointing to the buttons. Am I doing that right?
I think everything's down here.
I don't know. I think Sean could put him up there.
Okay. Perfect.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you joining us, supporting us. Take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks
See
for
you
having me.
next time.